Good morning, everyone. My name is Lou Banks, and I am a recovering, functioning fakeaholic. I'm glad you laughed. It wasn't even meant to be funny. I feel better. Functioning fakeaholics hide their real emotions. So functioning fakeaholics pretend they're okay when they're not really okay. And I did a brilliant job, and still do sometimes, of pretending a lot of the time. So pretending I'm happy when I'm sad, pretending I'm coping when I'm struggling, and pretending that I'm feeling confident when I'm feeling really anxious. And absolutely 10 years ago doing this, I would have not let anybody know how terrified I would be about doing this. And actually today I bumped into Steve. Steve's here somewhere. And Steve did a program with me in 2007. Ah, there he is. And at the end of the program, it was about 6 months long, and it was heavy. It was heavy, a lot of crying, a lot of deep stuff. And at the end of the program, the delegates were asked to give feedback to each other. And one of the questions was, would you let this person pilot your plane? Do you think they're competent enough, and would you trust them? So pilot the plane with you on it and everybody that matters to you in your life on it. I got really high scores for competence. I got really low scores for trust. And I remember being completely gutted and devastated about that. What I realised is, because I wasn't showing up as the real me, I had this air of I'm confident when I'm not really, people could see through it. Test daily, that's all I'm going to say. Test daily, Strictly Come Dancing, you can feel it, right? She's just not particularly real. Hope there's no real test. People are nodding, thank goodness for that. So for a very long time, I was able to pretend, keep those emotions at bay by being really busy, working hard, playing hard, working at such a pace that I never gave my chance the time to slow down, to feel what it is that I really needed to feel. And I did that for a long time. And then in 2012, I was diagnosed with severe adrenal fatigue, which is a result of being stuck in a state of fight, flight, freeze constantly. And that meant I had to make some lifestyle changes, which I did, but I was still pretending. I was still hiding a lot of the emotions that I was feeling. And it wasn't until I was having really severe nighttime panic attacks, where I was waking up in the middle of the night not being able to breathe, and at times feeling quite scared to go to bed, that I thought I really need to do something about this. So I started being more open about it, which was incredibly painful. What I realised was, actually, I wasn't alone. Loads of us, loads of you, might not do it to the extreme I was doing it, but we do hide how we're really feeling because we're afraid of being judged for feeling certain emotions. So the functioning fakeaholic is actually a really common human state. And I'm going to talk to you about that today, and how if we become more curious, we can help cure that. So all of you would have grown up hearing stories, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, about emotions. Some emotions are good, some emotions are bad. So anger is bad, fear is weak, resentment is wrong. And a lot of sweeping statements about emotions too. So you're over-emotional. I've had that a few times. Don't be led by your emotions, and you're an emotional wreck. Just that frame, emotional wreck, is not particularly helpful. And the more we hear these kind of stories, they become embedded in our belief system. We take them on as our reality. They become our narrative. They become our internal dialogue. And we start to avoid these because we don't think they're okay. The other really important thing to know is that human beings fear judgment. Every single one of you is hardwired to avoid judgment. And every single one of you will experience pain when you feel judged. So, if I believe all of this kind of stuff to be true, and I'm afraid of judgment, what I'm going to do is anything I can to avoid feeling these. I'll push them away, put on a brave face, pretend I'm confident when I'm not, all of that kind of stuff. But it wasn't always that way. Up until the age of around 2.5, 3 years old, children do not experience shame or the fear of judgment that I'm talking to you about. So when they feel something, they feel it in multicolour. They let the emotion come, whatever that emotion might be, and they allow it to engulf them. And I'm sure all of you have been in that supermarket, either with a child like that. My son is in the audience. He did that a few times. Seeing that child having that meltdown, and you may have had some judgment about that child's behaviour or the lack of control of the caregiver, but the child could not care less. They're having a fit in the middle of the supermarket, the shame and fear of judgment that you have going on, and they don't care. They let all of the emotion come, and they feel it so much that it passes through them, and it's gone. 5, 10, 15 minutes later, that same child is sat in the trolley, smiley, calm, like nothing has happened, while you're walking around going, get me out of this place. So let me talk to you about, I have put this here for a reason. I've remembered to pick it up, that's good. Adults feel the exact same level of intensity of emotion as the toddler. But we have learned to manage our emotions. And managing our emotions is a really healthy thing to do. We don't want to see any adults doing that when the off-license part is closed. Though it's never really closed anymore, is it? But managing emotions is completely different to suppressing them. Completely different. So I've got this Coke bottle because I think it demonstrates exactly the point I'm trying to make here. If I shake this up, we did wonder if the lid would blow off at some point. I can feel the pressure in the bottle. I've stopped shaking it. The pressure will ease slightly, but the bubbles are still there. I shake it again, and actually I can feel the pressure build more quickly because there was already pressure there. If I put this down now, eventually the pressure will completely ease off, but the bubbles are still there. The only way I can really relieve the pressure is by loosening the lid. If I don't loosen the lid, and I keep shaking it, eventually that lid will probably pop off. And most of you have heard the expression, he flipped his lid, she flipped her lid. So this is what the functioning fakeaholic does. They feel something, fear, anger, resentment, don't want to feel it, I don't want to be judged, so I push it away and I suppress it. And it will ease, but it won't go away. I'll do it again. Suppress it, comes up, I don't want to feel it, suppress, it eases, but it doesn't go away. And every time I suppress it, there's a little bit of residual left, until the functioning fakeaholic explodes, breaks down, collapses, leaves the relationship, ends the marriage, resigns from the job, gets adrenal fatigue, has nighttime panic attacks. So it's the massive, huge fear of judgment of feeling these emotions that keeps the functioning fakeaholic stuck. So where does this fear of judgment come from? Well, it comes from the brain, and it's called social pain. So social pain is when we experience any form of disconnection from another person, group of people, or ourselves. The perfect way to disconnect from yourself is to suppress your emotions. Judgment is at the heart of social pain. So when we feel judged by another, and when we judge ourselves in an unhelpful or unkind way, so I'm feeling angry, that's bad, I'm feeling afraid, that's weak, I'm feeling resentment, God, I'm wrong, we will experience social pain. Social pain and physical pain activate the exact same brain circuitry. So the anterior cingulate cortex lights up when we're in physical pain, and it lights up when we're in social pain. So I cut my finger, the anterior cingulate cortex will light up. I'm told I'm being over-emotional. The anterior cingulate cortex will light up. I twist my ankle, it lights up. I feel bad and self-berate because I've been angry, it lights up. I bang my head, it lights up. I'm told I'm silly for being afraid of something, it lights up. The more intense the pain, the longer that part of the brain is activated. The more intense the judgment experience, the longer that part of the brain is activated. To add insult to injury, we're also always looking for social threat. So that means we are anticipating judgment even when it's not happening. And we never fill in that gap with a positive. So I could look at all of you now and go, oh God, they're smiling, they feel sorry for me. Oh, and Russell's laughing because he just thinks it's a bit rubbish. I mean, we don't fill it in, rarely, with, he thinks I'm genius. We will always go to something unhelpful. When we feel that, when we're anticipating judgment and we're in social threat, that part of the brain is still lighting up. So even when we're not actually, factually being judged, we're still experiencing social pain. And the ongoing release of cortisol, the stress hormone, which is released during social pain and physical pain, causes havoc. So it can trigger anxiety and depression. It can actually impact our ability to heal physically, and it is absolutely exhausting. And that was exactly what my adrenal fatigue was. We cannot eliminate judgment because we cannot eliminate the brain, thankfully. But if we start being more mindful about the additional judgment we bring in and get more curious, we can hugely make a difference to how we and other people might be feeling. And there is another spanner in the works. Not only are we hardwired to avoid judgment, not only are we experiencing pain when we're judged, we are absolutely hardwired to judge. The reptilian brain tells us that judgment keeps us safe. And sometimes it actually does. So if we're a caregiver, whether we're looking after a child or a vulnerable adult, our judgment will help us make decisions and plan that will keep our child or the vulnerable adult safe. In the workplace, our judgment will help us make decisions that will keep our job role safe and/or our results safe. But judgments like anger is bad, you can't be over-emotional, being afraid is weak, none of those keep us safe. But the brain does not know the difference. We also, it's all great news this, isn't it? Is everyone feeling really happy? We are also subject to what is called negativity bias. So ERPs are event-related potentials, which are small voltages activated in the brain in response to external stimulus. Research has shown time and time again that negative stimulus creates much stronger voltage than positive. PTSD would be a classic example of that. An extreme negative experience stimulates such a strong voltage, it stamps those neural pathways, self-preservation straight away. But even the small stuff, negative, stronger voltage, which is why we are much more likely to remember insults than praise. Agree with that? Yeah. Remember failures, not successes. A lot of nodding. And focus much more on problems than we would on outcomes. It's the way that we're wired. All of us, all of you, I'm sure have experienced a time when you've been to a fantastic restaurant, great food, great ambiance, lovely company, but all you keep talking about is a miserable waiter. Or you've had that performance review at work, or maybe a school report that actually was pretty glowing, great stuff in there, but the one thing you're focusing on is that one piece of feedback around where you could develop a little bit further. So, we are absolutely hardwired to avoid judgment. We feel pain when we are judged. We are hardwired to judge. So I think you would all agree we need to manage what other judgment we might bring into our lives. And we can do that being mindful of our language and becoming more curious. So we've now heard that being judged, feeling judged, doing judging is part of our makeup. But by getting more curious, as a byproduct, judgment will dial down. When we dial up the curiosity, judgment will dial down. So being really thoughtful about the kind of language we use when we talk to other people and we talk to ourselves can make a huge difference to how we feel and how other people might feel around us. So first things first, there is no such thing as a bad, good, right, wrong, negative, positive emotion. Every single emotion that we experience is completely valid. When we label anything, not just emotion, but when we label emotion especially in a very black and white binary way, it just brings much more judgment in. The way that I like to think about emotion now, not all the time, but most of the time, is this. Is how I'm feeling right now serving me well or not? It completely neutralizes and takes judgment out. Is how I'm feeling right now serving me well or not? And that, of course, will be dependent on my outcome. What is it I want to do right now? What action do I want to take? And is how I'm feeling serving me well or not? So if I'm feeling really angry, ask my son, happens quite a lot, and I want to have an argument with somebody, it's going to serve me really, really well. If I'm feeling angry and I'm about to do this, it's probably not going to serve me so well. It's not wrong, but it might not serve me so well. If I'm feeling euphoric and I'm about to go on holiday with my friends, then that euphoria is going to serve me really well to have a great time. If I'm feeling euphoric and I'm about to meet my friend for lunch who is going through a really difficult relationship breakup, my euphoria is going to limit me really connecting with her in that moment. So it's not going to help me. So even those emotions that are labelled good and positive and great are not always helpful. I think this is a great metaphor example that I always use to kind of make this point, that we judge all the time, but in context of emotion. I was on a train coming home from London one day, and table of 4, I was on my laptop. The guy opposite was on his laptop. I always do that when I think about a laptop. And there was 2 young ladies next to me who had been shopping in London for the day. And they got 2 bottles of Prosecco out, popped one of them, 2 glasses. And we'd been chatting a bit before, the 4 of us. And the guy opposite said to them, "Oh, you don't want to be doing that on a Wednesday afternoon, girls." And I said, "Well, it depends on their outcome. If they want to get drunk, it's exactly the right thing to be doing. If they want to have a clear head in the morning, they probably should avoid it." But immediately, some random guy judging 2 young women for having a drink on a Wednesday afternoon. And we do that with emotion all of the time. So is how I'm feeling right now serving me well or not? If the answer is no, what we then tend to do is go into self-beration. Oh God, I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm weak. Instead of that, ask yourself or ask somebody else, what might help me feel a bit better right now? Is how I'm feeling right now serving me well or not? If no, what might help me feel a little bit better? What might help you feel a little bit better right now? Again, massive amount of curiosity, no judgment in there, really open. And what's really important with that question is the word might. Because when we're not feeling good, for someone to ask you what will help feels too much. What might help, immediately we access possibility. The right now is also really important. It's short term. Well, that might help me right now. Great, we'll just try that right now. So, is how I'm feeling serving me well? If not, what might help me feel better right now? So the next time you notice yourself judging yourself or judging someone else in terms of how they're behaving and the emotion that they're demonstrating, rather than labeling it, rather than giving yourself a hard time or adding even more judgment into someone else's world, ask yourself, is how I'm feeling serving me well right now? Because curiosity cures the fakeaholic. Thank you.